Well, Barbara, we are so happy to have you here at Living Springs Retreat. It's been over a year since we have had you with us. And we would just like to take some time right now to just discuss some questions that we had a lot of our viewers, people that call us, contact us, they know we're associated with you and they ask us a lot of questions. So we would like to just go ahead and cover some of those things. First question would be, what happened in Australia exactly? You are being called a quack, you are being called someone that's crazy out there. So what really is the truth? What happened? Why were you banned?
Yes, it was a shock to us because it really had no foundation. In fact, when the complaint first came to us from the HCCC, we laughed. We thought, surely this is a joke. They're saying that I'm advocating that a woman go and put her baby on goat's milk if she can't breastfeed, and they're claiming that goat's milk might be lethal. We just laugh because babies have been fed goat's milk for thousands of years. So this is the sort of thing. So we didn't really take it seriously, and I had to answer every question. And I felt I did, but I realise now they wanted scientific studies. That's what they wanted. But when you look back at how did this happen? Where did it all start? So the only way to explain it is that my husband has a political party. It's the Informed Medical Options Party, campaigning for the rights of Australians to have free choice. And I spoke at one of their rallies, and I spoke on the laws of health. And then 3 days later, Michael looked at the pro-vaccine people's website and they said, we've got to take this woman down. Are there any volunteers?
Wow, really?
So 3 people came forward, people I have never met. I think a nutritionist from Queensland was one of them. And she had looked obviously through my lectures and came up with something like the goat's milk, and then made complaints to the Healthcare Complaints Commission. And if they get a complaint, they have to pursue it, so they did. But they weren't happy with my answers, so I ended up having to go to a tribunal, I call it the Inquisition, where 4 people interviewed me, and I had Michael one side and the lawyer on the other, but they were not allowed to speak, everything was taped. And for 2 hours they questioned me. What they were really hoping for, to find a statement where I said, this will cure cancer. But I have never said such a thing, and they could not find it. But eventually, when it had all finished, and we spoke with our lawyer, she said, I can't believe it, they've got nothing on you. So she goes through these sorts of things all the time. And Michael said, does that mean Barbara will be freed from this ban? And she said, oh no, she'll get a life ban, but she won't go to jail, because if she was guilty she'd go to jail. So that's the justice system. And we found that the Healthcare Complaints Commission, you can't go higher than that, and they seem to be accountable to no one. So they have the authority to ban me for life. I can't speak, I can't give any advice, or 10 years jail. So, so that's what happened. So my husband was so incensed. He wanted to do something, and we thought of taking it to court, and then we found out it would cost $500 to even start the process, and it could go on for years, and it could cost us everything. So Michael wrote the book, The Assassination of Barbara O'Neill. I said, that's a bit strong. He said, no, it's good. It's good. And he wrote that, I guess, in my defence. And so, because some people say, you must have done something for them to come after you. So I say, well, read the book. Read the book, it explains. So it was hard for me at first, because my aim is really just to educate, to help people to get better health. And I've been stopped. Michael said, well, you've got a choice. You can retire, or you can just go overseas. So I said, well, I've never had so much knowledge in my mind. I've never had so much experience. And I still feel young, I still feel fit, I still have a lot of energy. I'll go overseas. So that ended up what happened. And in 2021, when I was in Germany speaking at a conference, a lady came up and she said, "I'm so sorry to say this, Barbara, but we're so glad you were banned. Now you're free to come to us." And I thought, the ban has freed me. Because I could never travel for long because I had to always be back for the program. And another blessing that's come out of this is the program could not run without me because people would not book in unless I was there. Well, now people are booking in for the program, and now I'm free to go elsewhere. So I now see why God allowed this to happen.
You kind of, as you were speaking right now, you kind of reminded me of Daniel in the Bible, not Daniel, I'm sorry, Joseph in the Bible, when he told his brothers, what you thought was for bad, God made for good,
Yes, yes.
because he ended up going to Egypt, and we know the story of the blessing he was in Egypt. And what you at first felt like it was something abrupt and something that was just totally life-changing, which it was, but then it ended up being for good. Something you didn't see initially, but with time now it's been such a blessing. And there is, like you said, a lot of countries that are saying, Barbara, if Australia doesn't want you, we want you. And now, speaking again about Michael with the book that he wrote, The Assassination of Barbara O'Neill, we've actually had several people call us and email us just really, really upset. What happened to Barbara? When did she die? What happened to her? So many people that were really, really just horrified, thinking that you actually were assassinated, and we have to, you know, calmly explain to them, no, and explain the whole reason of the title, and that it was Michael felt it was a character assassination. So we just tell them that no, you're fine, you're well, to our knowledge, you're alive, and to refer to the book to hear the whole story, because of course there's a lot more details.
That's right, there's a lot more details. Michael, in the book, he assesses every claim. You could read the book in an hour. It's only a small book, but it is on Amazon in US.
Okay. So speaking of US, a lot of people also contact us thinking that because you've been banned, you have moved to the US or other countries. Can you please clarify that?
My home is still Australia. My home is still our little mountain top home, and the health retreat still runs there. But I am away more than I am home. But my base is still in Australia.
You're still in Australia.
Yes,
That's still your home. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get into some other questions that people have had. Is it possible to have a phone or video consultation with you?
Unfortunately not. So my schedule is incredibly busy. But what my husband and I have done is we've made the information available. All the information is available up on YouTube. The information is out there, and I know that you get a few questions. My schedule is quite hectic, so unfortunately I cannot do consultations, one-on-ones or Zooms. But as I said, the information's there.
People all the time contact us wanting to know how they can book you, or how you can go, if you could do speaking engagements in different places. And we have referred them to your manager, which is Michael, also your husband, to book with him or to make arrangements. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. In fact, I often don't know where I am a few weeks ahead of where I am. And he arranges it all.
Why would somebody feel like they're starving even after they eat a high protein meal?
Well, there are three things that give the feeling of satiation or satisfaction, and that is fibre, protein and fat. And so I would also assess, yes, the protein's very important. So also is the fat. I'm not advocating a high fat diet, but there should be a part of fat in the meal, maybe a little olive oil in the lentils, maybe a little olive oil on the potatoes, maybe some avocado, maybe finishing the meal with 8 to 10 nuts. There's some good fats to finish with. I'd also check to make sure the person is chewing properly. Sometimes when people are eating too fast, they're not accessing the nutrients in their food that they need. And the third point may be that their hydrochloric acid is low. And to boost hydrochloric acid, You make sure there's gaps between meals, make sure you're drinking between meals and not with meals, and taking the juice of a lemon or a little cayenne pepper before the meal, that can boost hydrochloric acid.
Talking about fats, people often ask the question, because they know that you advocate fats, and you mention about how the body needs fats, which is different than what some of the teachings are out there. Can you list what the good fats are and what the bad fats are?
Sure. Well, I look at it like this. I always look at it from common sense. I look at the fats that God made. We've got avocado, we've got coconut, nuts and seeds. They're an excellent form of fats. And then we look at history, and historically there are 2 fats that were made from the flesh of the plant. So they were easily extracted in a woman's kitchen, and that is the coconut oil. And depending on where you lived, if you lived in the South Pacific Islands, it was coconut oil. If you lived in the Mediterranean, it was olive oil. If you lived up in Alaska, up in Canada, it could be seal, it could be fish. And a lot of the northern European countries like Sweden, say Scandinavia, it was usually dairy fats like butters. So we now know that today the cows aren't healthy, so the animal fats aren't the best fats. So the coconut and the olive oil, they've been used for centuries. You can still access these 2 oils. They are the best oils, and science shows that. So what are the dangerous oils? The worst oils you can take are the altered polyunsaturated fats. So the very word poly meaning there's lots of empty spaces on the molecular structure of the fat, which means that when these oils are extracted and they're exposed to light, heat and oxygen, it basically destroys the oil. So what are your polyunsaturated oils? That's safflower oil, sunflower oil, peanut oils, your seed oils, your nut oils. And when you look in the supermarket, they're in plastic bottles, see-through. It doesn't matter because they've already been totally destroyed, because in the high heat to extract these oils destroyed the oils. And deep-fried foods. Deep-fried foods is usually done in these cheap polyunsaturated fats. Again, they're already destroyed before they're even cooked, but the oils become rancid. And a rancid oil is a carcinogenic oil.
Barbara, what kind of diet do you follow?
The diet that I follow is a plant-based diet. I eat a high-fibre diet. I eat generous proteins. I have legumes. In fact, some days I have them every meal. That's my 2 main meals. And I have fats, not a lot of fats. I might have a teaspoon of olive oil a meal. I might have a few nuts and seeds after every meal. I have a fruit meal and I have a vegetable meal. So my fruit meal is usually breakfast, where I might have 2 or 3 pieces of fruit, usually the sourdough spelt toast with a little olive oil and avocado, and either red lentils or brown lentils or black-eyed beans or scrambled organic tofu. And some nuts and seeds. That's my breakfast. Lunch is usually always a big salad, always some baked, steamed or stir-fried veggies, and again a legume dish. If I do eat at night, it will be very light. It might be avocado and a few crackers. It might be soup, so something very light.
Is it okay to have desserts?
Certainly is. I make my husband an apple pie. Try to do it once a week. But that apple pie is made with spelt flour. The apples are stewed, and just when I finished, I put some sultanas or raisins in them. I put them in the pie dish, put the top on and bake it, and we might serve that with a coconut cream or a nut cream. We don't have it every day, maybe once a week.
So you're plant-based?
Yes. Yes.
Now, speaking of sweeteners, you speak a lot against sugars. What kind of sweeteners or natural sweeteners would you recommend?
So the natural sweeteners that we use is either raw honey or maple syrup, or palm sugar, also called coconut sugar, and that's just the crystallized nectar from the palm flower. So that's not highly refined like your cane sugar.
Since 2020, there's been a virus going around, and some people are for their jab and some are not. For those that have received this jab and are feeling very ill now, is there any suggestions that you have of what they can do to feel better or to get that out of their system?
It is a difficult one to detoxify from, but there's researchers coming up with a few things, and one is zinc, and the person can take a zinc supplement, or they can ensure that they're having pumpkin and sesame seeds and sunflower seeds every meal, because they are high in zinc. Zinc is locked up in grain, and when you make it into a sourdough bread, the culturing process of the sourdough releases the zinc. Also dandelion, so it can be as simple as having a dandelion tea or coffee every day, taking dandelion supplements, tablets. And the third one is white pine needle tea. So some are choosing to regularly drink that.
Okay, wonderful. Barbara, what do you think about coffee enemas?
Coffee enemas. Coffee enemas have been used for a few thousand years now, and Max Gerson, I guess, made them popular. What a coffee enema does, it stimulates the liver to dump waste. So sometimes we have a guest come to Misty Mountain who has cancer, who is aware of the coffee enemas and requests to have them, and so we have a colonic irrigation system at our retreat, and sometimes upon request we'll use the coffee enema.
Why do you think drinking lemon water would cause somebody to have acid reflux?
Interesting. I would have a look at when it was drunk, how it was drunk. Sometimes if too much is drunk all at once, there can be the feeling of it coming up. So I would suggest to that person, try sipping that glass of lemon water over maybe 20 minutes instead of drinking it all at once, and seeing if that makes a difference. Sometimes if lemon water is taken too close to a meal, it can cause that. So I would investigate to find out when they were taking it and how they were taking it.
Well, now, what are the benefits of drinking lemon water?
Lemon is one of the best tonics for the liver. So having a warm lemon water in the morning is a nice little tonic, has a nice tonic effect on the liver. Also, lemon alkalizes the tissues, so it's a nice drink to have in the morning to help the tissues alkalize.
What can be done for dry skin and vitiligo?
So for dry skin, I do recognize that some people have inherited dry skin, and they may need to ensure, number one, that they're eating adequate oils on the inside. I have a friend that had read some literature on dangers of oil, so she went totally oil-free, and her skin got so dry, got incredibly dry. I remember I was helping her one day, and we locked hands while I pulled her up, and it was like her hand was sandpaper. She had really dried out. You've also got to have a look at, is the person well hydrated? That certainly helps to soften the skin. But dry skin, someone might be eating adequate oils and yet their skin is still dry, and it could be an inherited factor. You can get some nice coconut oil-based creams that can be applied to the skin. So you would check hydration, and you would check whether they're eating adequate oils. Now, vitiligo is when the skin gets that discoloration. And I have met a few people that have conquered their vitiligo by going gluten and dairy free, also eliminating the refined sugars, the peanuts, wheat, oats, and also the dairy. It appears that there is a theory that the vitiligo might have a fungal component, and that's where the peanuts and the high release sugar foods like your wheats and your sugars could feed that.
Now, what is the problem with peanuts? A lot of people love peanuts, and they hear you speak a lot against, no, stay away from the peanut oil, the peanuts. Can you explain, please, if all peanuts, because there's a question too, raw, if I grow it myself, if it's cooked, if it's boiled, is there any safe peanut to consume?
The safe peanut to consume is when you grow it yourself, harvest it, wash them, and then cook them. They're very safe. And yes, God made the peanut, and it's got some excellent oils and excellent proteins. The problem today is 75%, I know, of Australians live in the city, so all the food is grown in the country. And we were talking about it here the other day, we had such a cool, frosty morning, and then we had a very hot day that got up into the 80s, and I said, this is where the problem arises, in the silos. So if you've got peanuts sitting in the silos, they get that cold, frosty morning where you get condensation building up, and then the hot sun on the moisture, that's perfect for mould growth. And Dr. Colin Campbell, in his book, The China Study, he showed very clearly, you know, when he went to the Philippines investigating the liver cancer in children, every jar of peanut butter he tested had aflatoxin, which is the mould waste that the mould aspergillus gives off, and that's very commonly found in peanuts. So really, it's the mould on the peanut that's the problem. Some people say, well, what about organic peanuts? And I said, well, I can't say because I don't know how it was stored. It's the storage. It's in the storage that the problem arises, because the peanut is actually a legume. It grows in the ground, and I think this is why it is so susceptible to mould growth. It's much more susceptible than any other nut, and then again, it is actually not a nut, but it's often compared to a nut.
So speaking about molds, if a person has been exposed to mold or they have mold in their system, what are some of the ways they can detox from that?
My book, Self-Healed by Design, I have targeted that issue in detail because I find there's a lot of ignorance on mold. A lot of people don't realise the dangers of mold. And because of my own experience and the experience of many people I've met, I felt convicted that I needed to write a book to show the history of mould, how it manifests itself, and how you can eradicate it from your body. And I remember being here at Living Springs maybe 5 years ago, and one of the film crew, she kept scratching, and I said, "You're scratching?" She said, yes. She said, let me show you a photo. And she showed me a photo of her 6 months ago, and her whole face was swollen. She had huge big patches on her skin. She said, I was living in a trailer and I was getting sicker and sicker, and I was lying in bed and I looked at the end wall and I saw this black. And every day the black got bigger. Oh, no. There was a leaking tap between her bedroom and the bathroom. And so basically the mould was coming into her body, and it came out it manifested itself in her in these major rashes. And that was, to me, that showed me how many people don't realise the dangers of mould. And it was interesting as I was investigating this, how the Bible says if there's mould in a house, you've got to destroy the house. If it's in fabric, the fabric has to be burnt. And so in my book I show that too. But basically, to get mould out of the body, you've got to, number one, make sure you have no more exposure to it, and number two, you've got to get the sugars right down, because it is the sweet things that really feed the mould.
Speaking about sweet things, would it be okay for somebody that's fasting to take a little bit of stevia in their lemon water? Would that make them break their fast? Or would it be okay?
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't, because the thing that would break a fast would be fibre. But I also encourage people to try and ease themselves off the very sweet tooth. And stevia is sweet.
Now, if somebody were to drink a lot of herbal teas, would that be considered water intake, or does it have to be plain water?
Now, there are some very thick herb teas, and very black, like the Colon tea that we sell here. But the light teas, like the ginger tea, the chamomile tea, the peppermint tea, they're lighter teas. So you could probably almost say that a cup of tea would be equal to maybe half a cup of water. So it can certainly contribute to your water intake.
Now, Barbara, you are big on Celtic sea salt. You love Celtic sea salt. You take it regularly. Can you explain exactly the method? Is it something that you put in your water? Do you put it in your mouth first? How exactly can somebody take Celtic sea salt?
Okay, so let me explain it. And I got this information from a few sources, and one of the sources is Dr. Robert Thompson, who wrote the book, The Calcium Lie, and he believes the clearest indicator of a creator God is seawater, because seawater has 92 minerals, the exact same mineral and proportion and balance as is found in the body. And the closest to seawater is Celtic salt. Celtic salt has 82 minerals. And Dr. Robert Thompson says, if you put a little crystal of Celtic salt on your tongue before every glass of water, he says all you're doing is replacing the minerals you lost yesterday in your urine, in your perspiration, in your bowel movements. So how big is the crystal of Celtic salt? Probably about the size of a sesame seed. If someone's not used to salt, I think I'd advise even less than that to get their body used to it. Celtic salt is a very wet salt because it has 3 magnesiums, and magnesium is a water-hungry molecule. So when you put that crystal on your tongue and then drink your water, the mucous membranes in your mouth absorb those minerals, take it to the cell, you drink your water, and that water-hungry molecule, magnesium, actually pulls that water inside the cell. So it is far better to put it on your tongue and then drink it rather than put it in your water. Because of the 3 magnesiums in the water, it dissolves into the water, so you don't quite get the same effect.
So would you let the salt completely dissolve and then drink water?
Not necessarily. I usually put it in my mouth, have a bit of a crunch, then drink my water. By then, you know, some of the minerals have absorbed.
So would there be any benefit to cooking with Celtic sea salt?
I always cook with Celtic sea salt, but I never put my Celtic salt in till the end. Yes, it has 92 minerals, and cooking does not kill minerals. So you could put it halfway through, but it is my habit to put it in near the end.
Now you mentioned about seawater and having the minerals, but what about kelp and seaweed and those types of things?
The kelp and the seaweed, I guess my concern is the state of the seas today, and we've got the Chernobyl and the Japanese disaster especially that happened near the seas, and there is so much waste dumped into the seas today. I'm hesitant with the seaweeds. And then the question is, well, what about the seawater? Well, with the seawater, those waves, the pounding of the waves is constantly purifying the water, and a lot of heavy metals and chemicals sink to the bottom of the sea, and that's where the seaweeds can take it up. That's also why I say to people that like fish, I say, be cautious of your crabs and your oysters and your prawns, because they're taking up that from the bottom of the sea.
What would be the cause for rosacea and redness on the nose, and how could you heal it?
What we find is that every skin disease has an allergy component. And so whenever there's a skin problem, whether it be eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, we advocate ceasing the 5 allergens, which is dairy, wheat, oats, peanuts, refined sugar. We also add a word of caution to that, is that it can take at least 2 months to see a result. I have also found with ladies who are the most commonly taken down with rosacea, there can be a hormone factor. And the imbalance that we are seeing is estrogen dominance, progesterone deficiency. And so that high estrogen can also feed the inflammation of rosacea. So for a lady that has rosacea, my suggestion is to stop the 5 allergens, to check that she has no mold exposure in her house. That can be a component, and also to watch my hormone lecture that explains how you can balance the hormones.
Speaking of your hormone lecture, you mentioned that one of the things that makes people's hormones go out of whack is the consumption of products or things in cheap plastic. Now, there's been a lot of concern also with there being microplastics in Celtic sea salt. How would you address that?
I have had a few people ask me about that, and I have referred them to the producers of Celtic sea salt, because that is something I cannot answer.
Would there be any kind of percentage of microplastics that would be safe if the Celtic companies say that there is a little bit in there?
It is something new to me. I've probably only heard it over the last maybe year, and I guess because people are talking about it, they must have been told. Maybe there's something has come out about the microplastics, so it's something I cannot comment on because I do not know. And I'm sure that if they contact the producers of Celtic salt, they will be able to answer their questions.
Do you have any advice on restless leg syndrome?
Restless leg syndrome have been found to respond to a few things. One is doing some intense leg workouts through the day. So how would you get intense leg workouts? Swimming definitely works the legs. Not everyone can swim or has the ability to swim or has access to a pool. So the other one is rebounding or trampolining. You can get some quite intense workouts on that because it's your legs that are doing the springing, and also the exercise bike. So looking at some intense physical workouts on the legs through the day. Also checking that the person's not taking anything in that can leach magnesium, because it's magnesium that relaxes the muscles. So the things that can leach magnesium are specifically caffeines and refined sugars. So before the person goes to bed, let's say first of all they've done some intense leg workouts through the day, and have an Epsom salts bath before they go to bed, because Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate, and also the hot water relaxes the muscles. If someone doesn't have a bath, another option is to massage their legs with topical magnesium oil. I know that in Australia the topical magnesium oils are becoming very popular, and there are claims that more magnesium is taken into the body than even by mouth. So those topical oils can certainly help to relax those legs. And also taking magnesium by mouth. For someone who has a severe problem like that, we advise magnesium citrate, even 500 milligrams 4 times a day. So the person can try these things and see what helps the most.
You just mentioning the magnesium oil being rubbed on the skin reminded me of the fact that there are a lot of people out there that cannot obtain the Anna's Wild Yam cream, which is something that you promote a lot for hormonal imbalance, and they want to know if taking wild yam orally would work as well as putting the cream topically.
Well, one of the doctors that first blew the whistle on this hormonal imbalance is Dr. John Lee. Now he's dead now, but his books are still available. And in one of his books, I think one of the books is What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Menopause, he says the liver detoxifies the active components in the wild yam. So when you apply it via the skin, you're getting about 400% more. And a lady contacted me recently and told me that her husband had bought the dried yam herb and had made a cream out of it for her.
Oh, wow. So, Barbara, this is something new I've never heard before, but somebody asked if you know anything about research that suggests that men should urinate sitting down. Since birth until manhood, they should urinate sitting, and that will help with prostate problems. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't. And it doesn't make much sense to me. Especially raising boys out in the bush, where when they go to the bathroom, it's at the tree, or at a tree in the bush.
Yeah, that was different when I read that question. Can cartilage grow back on hips and joints?
Well, I never say never. And we've got some amazing herbs that do have growth stimulants in it. And the one that I'd particularly probably advise for that is comfrey. So you can get some comfrey creams, you can buy dried comfrey, and if you buy dried comfrey, comfrey. You put a little water in it and bring it to the boil till it gets soft, and if it's still a little bit runny, you could put, say, some psyllium or slipperyelm or chia in it to make it a little bit more firm, and then make a poultice of that and put it on the area. And if someone's wanting to grow new cartilage in an area, that would probably have to be done for maybe to wear the poultice for at least 4 hours a day, and if it's comfortable, even overnight, but also to get the comfrey cream and rub that in.
So Barbara, what can somebody do if they have developed several infectious diseases because of a tick bite?
So the first thing you target is the tick bite, and comfrey, sorry, not comfrey, got comfrey on the brain. Charcoal. You see, charcoal absorbs and neutralizes poisons. So if they're still having trouble, even a week or two after the tick bite, you still can put the charcoal on the tick bite, because that can indicate there might be still a bit of activity there. Charcoal absorbs and neutralizes the poisons. No other substance does that, and it's given the name adsorb. Adsorb means absorb and neutralize poison. And maybe they could even take charcoal by mouth to absorb any poisons that are going through their body from the tick bite.
What do you think of the keto diet?
The keto diet is quite an extreme diet. It is high fibre, high protein, high fat. And there's no doubt about it that it certainly has helped people to overcome epilepsy. You know, the reports show that in some cases 90% of people on the keto diet reported that they'd conquered their epilepsy. But we don't advocate meat and dairy products. So what we advocate is a plant-based keto diet. So how would you do a plant-based keto diet? Say breakfast would be a cup of lentils, some sliced tomato, and maybe an avocado, and maybe some steamed silver beet or collard green, and a few nuts and seeds. But with that, to supplement with some coconut oil. Now, coconut oil is high in medium chain fatty acids, and what the keto diet depends on is the liver breaking down the fat to ketones, and the liver loves breaking down those medium chain fatty acids to ketones quicker than any other type of fat. Ketones are neurohealers, neuroprotectors. So that's the theory on how it works. And historically, look at Dr. Atkins' diet, which was high fibre, generous proteins and fats. And he found, and I don't know at the time whether he realised the significance of it, but he found that a lot of his epileptic patients, their seizures were reducing. But Dr. Bruce Fife, he's got a few books on this. One, Stop Autism Now, one, Stop Alzheimer's Now, where he has, I think in both books, about the third chapter, it's called The Ketone Miracle. And he shows how the ketogenic diet works and why it works. And he calls his diet the coconut ketogenic diet, where people supplement with their coconut to actually trigger this ketosis.
Barbara, you refer to the liver as a project manager often. What can somebody do if their liver is not functioning well?
Well, the good news about the liver is it's a recoverable organ. And as a recoverable organ, if given the right conditions, it can revive. And God, in His wisdom and mercy, has given us some herbs that directly affect the liver to the point of cleansing it and toning it. One is St. Mary's thistle, called milk thistle, and the other is dandelion, and another one is gentian, Gentain, gentian. They're very, very bitter herbs, so it's probably best to take it in a glycerin tincture form or in a tablet form, because they're incredibly bitter herbs. And I did mention earlier that lemon plays a role as a tonic to the liver. So to be kind on the liver, plant-based diet, no chemicals, no stimulants, and also a castor oil compress can be worn over the liver area, which is under your right rib, for maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. So if the person implements all of these things, then little by little the liver will recover.
Good, good. How do you prepare legumes? You speak a lot about you like having your lentils and you like having your beans. What is the proper way to cook legumes?
Okay, so it's slightly different for some. Red lentils, they're almost falling apart when you cook them. So I rinse them very, very well before I cook them. So I rinse them very well. I bring them to the boil and there will be a white fluff on top. So I put them under the sink and I put the tap on and I let the water come up and that white residue goes away and I rinse them again, and then that's all I rinse, the lentils, the red lentils, because they're almost falling apart when they're cooked. The brown lentils, in fact all other legumes are best soaked overnight, rinsed very well, brought to the boil, then you'll see the big white fluff. You've got to get that white cloud away, and then rinse them again and then let them cook. And when they're cooked, sometimes maybe with chickpeas I'll rinse and chickpeas, or you call them garbanzos, and kidney beans, they probably take the longest. Then I might rinse them halfway through cooking. When they're finished their cooking, I rinse them again. So you've got to look at that water as dirty water. That's the water that's going to create the wind. And so what do I do then? Well, in another pot I might have the sauce. It might be a tomato and garlic and onion sauce. It might be a curry sauce. It might be a cashew milk with maybe marjoram. You know, so there's a few different ways. The first book I ever got was an Indian cookbook, and wow, they know how to do their legumes. So many different types. So when the legumes are soft, I put them in with the sauce and I let that slowly cook on a very low heat so that the flavours start to go into the beans. And we find at our retreat that's how we prepare the beans, and we don't have anyone with stomach pain or wind problems doing it like that. In his book, The Plant Paradox by Dr. Gundry, he shows that pressure cooking also, it kills all the lectins, and lectins are inflammatory substances that if they can get into the blood, they cause inflammation. So if you pressure cook, I'd bring it to the boil, rinse it, and then pressure cook it. And after the pressure cooking, you could rinse it. You have to catch it, because if the beans are falling apart, of course you're going to lose half your beans. So that's why some people choose to stop halfway and rinse it.
Okay, that's great. When would be the best time to drink smoothies or juices? Do you do it with food, or should you do it in between your meals?
Well, there's a bit of a difference between smoothies and juices, because smoothies have fibre. So smoothies should take the place of a meal. Or sometimes people will have a smoothie as like a dessert, you know, at the end of the meal. Whereas juices have no fibre in them. And what we do at the retreat, and I know we also do here at Living Springs, we have juicing days. So the first 2 days are just juices. So we serve the vegetable with a little bit of fruit juices every 2 hours. So they're basically taking the place of a meal, but the juice isn't going to last too long, so we serve it every 2 hours. What if someone wants to continue juicing when they go home? When would they have it if they're eating their meals? They might have it half an hour before a meal. If they have it too close to the meal, it can stop your appetite. Or some people choose to have a vegetable juice, you know, of an evening where they would normally have a meal.
What do you think about the Gerson diet? Gerson therapy, excuse me.
Now, the Gerson therapy certainly had an effect, and there's no doubt about it. He had quite a lot of success rate, and that's a lot of juicing. There are a few things I don't totally agree with. They had to have essence of liver, and I think it's very difficult to get a healthy liver today, and I personally don't use animal products at all. So there were certainly some good points about the Gerson diet.
Barbara, what can be done if somebody wants to use the yoni eggs, but they keep coming out. They will not stay in. What is your advice on that?
Okay, well, it does indicate to me that that lady's pelvic floor muscles have no strength. So how can she gain strength? Well, a few things. Rebounding helps to strengthen pelvic floor muscles. Squatting helps to strengthen pelvic floor muscles, and doing core strengthening exercises, that also helps strengthen pelvic floor muscles. So usually if a woman will do that for a couple of months, she can usually hold the stone. But I'd also inquire, is she pushing it in as far as it will go, so it goes right up to the cervix? And also, a woman should be able to tighten her pelvic floor muscles so that it holds the stone. Now, if even with that she still finds it hard to hold it, she could sleep with it. So even though when you're sleeping your body's relaxed, your pelvic floor muscles are aware that there is something there, and they will put a little bit of effort to hold it, especially when you get up in the morning.
You mentioned exercises. Is that something that people would do, or women would do, with the yoni eggs in or without them in?
Most people are familiar with Kegel exercises, which is where they tighten those pelvic floor muscles. You can tighten the pelvic floor muscles against the yoni stone while it's in there, and that will help to strengthen those pelvic floor muscles internally. And you certainly can do those exercises with the yoni stone in.
Can somebody that was born with allergies, any type of food allergy, reverse it?
I believe so. And usually if they're born with an allergy, it's come down from the parents. And so what I find is when the 5 most common allergens are taken out of the diet and they go to a plant-based diet that is a lot lower in grain and has more of the legumes, the nuts, seeds, vegetables, fruit, I find that they do conquer their allergies.
Now, you advocate a lot the plant-based diet and plant-based milk, but is there any type of animal milk that would be safe to consume in any way, shape, or form?
Personally, I don't have milk at all. If people say, what milk do you drink? I say, I'm weaned, I have food. And when you look at milk, God basically caused mammals to have milk to feed their babies. And we are the only creature that drinks milk past babyhood. And if you look at the northern countries of Europe, the Scandinavia, Sweden, Norway, that were probably higher dairy consumers, you'll find that as adults most of the dairy was consumed in a cultured form, which was yogurt, kefir, the mostly fresh cheeses, and in that state the proteins and the sugars in the milk have been totally broken down, so they're a lot easier to digest. But I'd also like to suggest back then the milk was organic. Mm-hmm. Also, often dairy farmers were dairy farmers for many generations, so the children were already born with the enzymes in the gut to break it down. I'm a 5th generation Australian Scottish descent, and I don't think any of my ancestors had dairy, because as a child it certainly made me feel sick. I never ever liked it, and I know that my sisters all have dairy allergies, so we obviously don't have the enzymes to break it down. But I do acknowledge that there are some cultures that have been drinking it. It's part of their culture. But I do not believe we need to drink milk. I know that if a mother has a baby with a severe allergy and she cannot breastfeed, the goat's milk is the closest to human milk.